Welcome to another session of INF154. So in this session, I'm going to focus on the revision test 2 or 3 preparation. So for this session, I'm going to move very quickly because I have a practical due tomorrow for artificial intelligence. So I'm just going to move fast on the questions. So let's start with question 1. So for question 1, so the cases in which 1.1, the cases in which a switch statement, I think here it was supposed to be end with. So the cases in which a switch statement end with. So let me take you back to the syntax of a switch statement. So you have this switch, then you put a variable. This can be a variable or an expression. The expression can be a string, a double, or an integer. Then you compare this to whatever you put on the case. For example, variable equals to case 1. Is variable equals to 1? If that's true, you are going to execute this code. Then if this is false, it's going to compare with case n. Its variable equals to n. If that's true, it's going to execute this code. And again, the default case is like your else part. So if everything fails, then you are going to execute the default part. Notice that every case statement ends with a break. If you don't put a break, it's going to be an error. So for this question, it was supposed to be the cases in which a switch statement end with. So here you were supposed to say the break. So now we can move to 1.2. So study the following code and complete it by filling in the missing code. So what the program does, so it allowing a user to book a doctor's appointment. That's the main purpose of the program. So note the price is affected by the doctor that the user selects when their age or selects and their age. Refer to the line number in your answer. So we have to complete this code. So you have to be fast. They are going to give you coding questions. You have to be fast within like a short period of time. So if you've been practicing, this should be easy. You are supposed to do this very fast. So now when we consider the code here, they are declaring variables. So we have the date, time, date. If you didn't do this, I think you'll do it later, but by now you should know this. Then the names, surname, dog1, dog2, those ones are strings. Then the age is an integer. Then we have the subtotal and the final amount. So now they declare constants, the child hour fee, adult per hour fee. I think here it's per hour also. Then teen per hour fee, pension per hour fee, doctor 1, I guess the fee of doctor 1, then the fee of doctor 2. Then they give you this event handler method. So notice that these are global variables because they are not defined within this private. They don't belong to any method. They are outside of these methods. So they are global variables. Then here they are storing the date from the date time picker. You can open your Visual Studio Code to play around with the date time picker if you haven't done it. So this one stores the date. Then the first name, we get it from a text box. Surname, we get it from a text box. Doctor 1, we get that. Then I guess it's the name of the doctor from the radio button, the first radio button. Then doctor 2, we get the name of the doctor from that specific radio button. So the age equals to convert to int32. Then the value that's inside the numeric up down, we are converting it to an integer and we are storing it inside the age. Then we have the process. So we have if they haven't completed this. So this means we have to complete line 19. Then subtotal equals to child hour fee. Then else if this fails, do this, subtotal equals to adult per hour fee. Then else, if these two fail, you are going to execute the else part. You have to do this. So this is a single if else statement. So it's a multi-way selection because you have more than two options to make. Then then we have the other if statement, I guess, to determine like to calculate the fee for that specific doctor. So if red one checked, we know that it's the first doctor. Then final amount equals to, we are adding to the subtotal. The subtotal, we calculated it using those if statements. Then again, red 2 got checked. Again, we adjust. If the second doctor is selected, we are going to execute this. Then how do we answer this? Normally, this question, like the way they said this question was not that clear, but in terms of this part, this if statement, if we consider 19 and we consider the corresponding block, subtotal equals to child fee. So to determine whether someone is a child, it's a teen, it's an adult, we have to consider the age. So they were supposed to be specific, but they were not that specific. They wanted you to think. So child fee. So normally a child is, you are considered a child when you are less than 13 years old, and you are considered a teen when you are 13 years older but less than 18 years old. An adult, you are greater or equals to 18. So the solution for this was supposed to be, let me see, was supposed to be line 19. For line 19, you are supposed to say if age, because it refers to the child, if age is less than 13, that's your child. Then again, for the, what if it's that person is not a child? What if the person is an adult? So for adult here, subtotal equals to adult fee. So for adult, we know that else if age is greater than or equals to 18, that person is an adult. Let me say age, it's greater or equals to 18, that person is an adult. Then for child, you calculate the fee. Then for adult, then we know that if that person is not a child and that person is not an adult, by default the else part is going to be executed. What are we doing at the else part? We are just following the process. So in this case, it's going to be subtotal is equals to I guess it's a teen per hour, I guess, yeah, per hour fee. That's it. That's how you were supposed to answer this. You were supposed to complete 1, 2, and 3. Then yeah, it was supposed, but if try to like analyze this code, since you guys have time. For me, I don't have time. I won't go into details. So let's move to another question. So for the other question, we have one of the following controls available is the open file dialog control. Give the line of code which, when it is executed, will make an open file dialog named OFD my files appear. So we know that an open file dialog, it's used to get files as inputs from the form. So like when you try to do this, let me just go to any random website and try to save. Let me see if it's saving. You see it opens this. So this is sort of like an open file dialog. Like you normally it's used to get files, not to save. To get files, maybe you want to get a specific file. For example, you want to just get like a file from your PC. You use the open file dialog if you haven't used it in class. The most important method with the open file dialog is the like that specific name, then to make that like file dialog to appear, you just say dot show. You say like OFD my files, depending on the name, dot show dialog. That's how you display an open file dialog like that. Then that file dialog will show. Now I don't have time. I was supposed to show you how it works if you haven't done it in class, but that's the idea. Then the next question, when using the random objects dot next method, which has two arguments, then they want you to complete. So the first number is minimum, the second number is an minimum. So we know that with random numbers, the general like steps that you need to follow, it's first you have to declare like the variable, right? Then you have to create a random object. Then you have to generate a random number and store it inside the variable. So those are the three steps. When we apply this, we are going to have let's say step one is to declare, let's say int x, for example. Then create a new random object. How do you do that? You just say random, you give it a name, maybe r equals to new random. This means you are creating a new random object which comes from the random class. So that's how you create the object. Then now we want to do the step 3. So we are going to generate a number, so r dot next. Then here you are going to put the minimum, so minimum. Then you have to put what, the maximum, like that. So this means we declare the variable, we create a new random object, then we generate the random number using the dot next method, and we store that random number inside the variable we created. So this 0 is inclusive, so this was supposed to be inclusive minimum, and we know that this 8 is not inclusive, so it's exclusive maximum. So the answer was supposed to be, the first number is inclusive minimum, the second number is an exclusive maximum, because this will generate random numbers between 0 to 7 excluding 8. So that's how you are supposed to answer that, just inclusive minimum, exclusive maximum. Then let's move to the next question. Then next question, you have created a C# program. Here it was a typo, I guess I typed these 2 times, that calculates and display a customer's water bill. The customer's name and units used should be displayed in a rich text box along with the total bill amount the customer must pay at the end of the month. So this was somehow related to your practical, the one you did. So but it's just a small portion of that practical, since this is a test, you can't do the whole practical. So the charge rate for units used are as follows. So you have units, I'm sure by now you understand this. So this means if the units used is between 0 and 200, the charge rate is 2.5. Then if it's between this, the charge rate is this. If it's between this, the charge rate is between this, and if it's above this, or if it's equals to and above this, the charge rate is equals to this. Then another condition, if the monthly bill exceeds this 300,000, then a supercharge of 14% will be added on. For every customer, the minimum monthly bill must be 100. So this is exactly like your practical, they just changed this 14%. So how do you solve this? Normally for every problem that you solve, you are going to follow that IPO. It's very important, the IPO model. The IPO model. So you are going to ask yourself, what are the inputs? Then what is the process? Then you have to identify your output also. So the inputs are going to give you the variables needed to store those specific inputs. The process is your logic, which is your flow diagram, and the outputs, they are also going to give you like the necessary variables, the variables that you need to calculate and stuff. So let me follow the IPO model. So what are the inputs that I need? So for the inputs I need to get, what am I getting from the user? The only thing I'm interested is the units. I can call it units. The data type is what? It's an integer. So before I code, I plan first what am I supposed to do. Then after getting the units, the next thing that I have to identify is the outputs. I have to calculate the charge. I have to determine the charge rate. Then this one is a double because it stores decimally 2.55, 7.5. Those are doubles. Then the next thing that I have is what do I need to calculate? The monthly bill. So I can say monthly, then I can say bill, which is just a double since we are just multiplying the charge rate with the units used. Then the next thing that I need is what the supercharge. So I have to have the supercharge, which is just a double because it's a percentage of the total monthly bill, only if the bill exceeds. Then that's all. Let me see what are we getting also. So again, we are also getting the customer's name. So I need a string for the customer's name. So the customer's name. So I have to put that as, that one will be a string. Then from this I can do the let me see. Yeah, I think that's all. Then what about the output? The output, I can do it as a string. That's what I need. Then from this, if they didn't normally they have to give you a form, but they assume that you will remember the form from the practical, I assume. But if they didn't give you the form, you have to design the form after identifying your inputs and output. So for the units, we can get it from a numeric up down since it's an integer. Then charge rate, we have to calculate it. It's an output. Monthly bill is an output. We have to calculate it. Supercharge is an output. We have to calculate it. So we don't get this from the form. We calculate them. The name, it's an input. We have to get it from the form, so we can use a text box. The output, it's a string that displays the customer name and the bill, whatever. But that will be a rich text box since it's like it's used to display like it's used to format and display text. So after this I can do the code now. So normally you do the pseudo code then the code, but now I don't have time. I'm just going to do the code. So you have to declare the variables. So in this case, as I said, you have an integer for units used. It's not necessary to initialize them. Charge rate, it's a double, so double charge rate equals to 0. Then I initialize it because I'm going to calculate it, so it's not necessary. But yeah, monthly bill equals to 0, or I can do them on one line to save space. Then supercharge is equals to 0, and it's also a double. That's it. Then I have the name as a string. So the name, it's a string. I'm getting the name from the user. Then I can have a string for the output. Then I can initialize. It's not necessary, but yeah. Then the second thing that I have to do is what? Is to get the inputs from the form and store them inside the variable. So I'm getting units used. So units, is equals to, where do we get the units? Let's say from a text box or a numeric up down. Since they were not specific, they were not going to penalize you for if you used either. So it's either you use txt units.text or txt units, nud units.value. So this, on my left I have an integer, on my right I have a string.text with a string. So I have to convert, so to double in, to int 32, because on my left I have an integer. That's it, I'm storing the units. Then the name is equals to txt name.text. That's it, we are done getting the inputs from the user. Now we can go to the process or the logic. So the first thing that I have to calculate is the charge rate. So that's simple if statements. So if the charge rate falls between 0 and 200, I'm supposed to apply that specific charge rate. So if units is greater or equals to 0, so if units is greater or equals to 0, this means I can execute this condition, but at the same time those units must be less than, because it's in between, must be less than. So it's an AND, units it's less than, in this case it's 200, then I have to apply a charge rate of what, of 2.5. Notice if I use or, let's say my units is maybe, let's say 300. So with an or, it's going to say, is 300 greater or equals to 0? Yes. So it's a true. Then it's going to execute this because it's an or. If we find one true, everything is true. That's why we say AND. Both conditions have to be satisfied. Then other than that, we just repeat. It's just copy and paste. Else if, it's just copy and paste, copy and paste. Then let me paste here. Else if, in this case it's between what, 201 and what, and 400. Then you have to apply a charge rate of what? Charge rate is equals to 5.0. That's it. Then you just copy and paste again. Else if, then now it's between 401 and 600. Then you apply 7.5. But for the last condition, you can use else if it's greater or equals to. So you can say else if units is greater or equals to, then 601. This is valid. Or since this is the last option, you can just say else, because it's the last option. Else units is equals, charge, in this case it's charge rate equals to 10. That's it. Then you are done with determining the charge rate. The next thing that you have to calculate is your monthly bill. So to calculate that, you just say monthly bill is equals to the charge rate multiplied by units. It's going to give you the bill, the initial bill that you have to calculate. Now you can determine if this bill exceeds 3,000. So in this case, I'm going to say if monthly bill exceeds, it's greater than, not greater or equals to, it exceeds, it must be greater than 3,000. Then you can apply a supercharge. So supercharge is equals to 14% of that monthly bill. So I'm going to say multiplied by 0.14. Then the new monthly bill will be plus equals to, I'm adding to the previous monthly bill what I have, the supercharge. So this is the same as monthly bill equals to monthly bill plus the supercharge. Then I'm done for the if. But for every customer, the minimum monthly bill must be 100. So this means else if, I have to check if monthly bill is less than 100. Then if it's less than 100, I'm just going to keep the monthly bill at what? At 100. So this is how you were supposed to do this. Then the next thing that I have to do is the output. The output, it's straightforward. You can directly use the rich text box, or you can calculate the output first. So I'm going to say name, then, or I can say customer name. They won't penalize you. So plus, then the name. Then new line, I add a new line. Then I can say output plus equals to, here I can say equals to, then plus equals to, then the total bill. So here they were interested in total bill. They didn't care about those supercharges and what. So monthly bill plus, then you just say new line. If you did your practical, this should be easy to follow. This should be easy to follow. It's not that complicated, but with the time they give you for the revision test, you have to be fast. So yeah. Then next question. So for the next question, we have, in a switch statement, the data type of the value in each case must be the same as the data type of variables after the switch word. So I assume here they meant like this data type, in this case of this variable, must be of the same data type as these cases. So this one must be of the same data type as this variable. This variable must be same data type as n, and so on if you have multiple like switch. Like for every case, it must match the data type of the expression inside the switch. So that one must be true. So that's true. Then we just continue. Then study the following code and identify 20 syntax errors. So this one is for fun, but they won't ask you to identify 20 syntax errors, but I'll just cover a few here since I don't have time. You can look at the paper on your own and try to identify all of them. So when it comes to syntax errors, those are errors that causes your code to crash. So the common ones are, let's say, this thing, like when you use assignment, the data types are not the same, missing semicolon, undefined variables, and so on. So in this case, I have to consider the variables that I have, no missing colon. So I start at line 1 and check if there's no like error. So in this case, there are no errors. Here I think it's just a mistake of just pressing enter, but this is valid. This is valid when you have input here. Then int alu, this is valid because they are separated by a semicolon, and you are just saying int. This is valid. So again, this line is valid. Double total cost, this is valid. Int random number is valid. Random, then random equals to new random. Look at this. We know this, it's supposed to be capital letter R. This is the name, it can be anything. And here they provided a small letter R, but it's supposed to be a capital letter R. So this will be my first syntax error. Then I move to the next line. This line const, we don't have a data type, so this is invalid. It must have a data type. Then again, same with this one. So this will be the second error. Then here const int, yes, this is valid, no syntax error. Then next line is this comment. This comment is forward slash, it's wrong. It must be 2 forward slashes. Then you can, as an exercise, I'm going to leave the rest for you as an exercise to identify them. Then next question. So for the next question we have, suppose, okay, the following code is supposed to generate a random number between 1 and 0 and also determine if it is odd or even. So identify the logical errors. So we know that to create a random number, we follow those 3 steps. Then to determine if the number is odd or even, we do the remainder or the modulus operator. So let's see, what did they do? So this one we have so this is valid int x. Then we have int answer. This is valid. Here they wanted logical errors, so you are not concerned, there are no syntax errors. This is also valid. Then we have the method. These are global variables. Then we have the event handler calculate button. So x equals to new number, so we are using that random number object, new number, then dot next 0 to 1001. This is valid because we know that 1001 won't be included, so that's valid. Then answer equals to x over 2. No, we can't use x divided by 2 to determine if a number is divisible by 2. An even number is a number that is divisible by 2. X divided by 2 will return the result of division. It won't return the remainder. So to get the remainder, we were supposed to use what? Percentage here. We were supposed to use percentage for that specific part, not division. We are supposed to use the remainder operator, so we were supposed to use this percentage. So this is wrong. Then if answer is greater than 0, also this is wrong. If the remainder is 0, that's where we can conclude okay, if the number is not equals to 0, if the result is not equals to 0, then that thing is odd, otherwise it's even. So let me just do it quickly here. Let me see, why is my PC not okay? So in this case, it's just the error was answer, so we have to say answer equals to x modulus 2. That's it. It will return the remainder. So if the remainder, which is answer, is not equals to 2, then you can do that thing of odd. It's odd. Then otherwise, then you can say even. That's it. That's how you are supposed to do that. So the first mistake was this. Second mistake was this. Let me check if there are no other logical errors other than those two. So if I check up here to string, no, there are no logical errors. It was only those two. Then question 4, which I think it's the last question. So for question 4.1, when we assign values to any variables, the type of that value must be of the same type as the variable. This one I did it many times. I explained this in detail, so this is obvious. It must be every time you use an equals to or an assignment operator, the data type on the right and the data type on the left must be of the same type. Then the conditional statement in an if statement is also called. So whatever you put in an if statement, so if you say if, then you open and close, the condition that you put here, the conditional statement, it's a Boolean expression. So here you were supposed to say a Boolean expression because that's what you put inside the if, or those are the condition. It's a Boolean expression, or you can say it's a condition, but in this case they wanted the Boolean expression part because they already said like the conditional statement. Then 4.3, review the following code. What the program does, it converts kilograms to either pounds or grams. So this is sort of an if statement related. The required values for constants, you have pound conversion rate, then grams. again, before I go to my code or whatever, before I answer, I have to identify my what? My IPO. So it's input, output, and process. What are the inputs? What's the process? And what's the output? So for the inputs, what do I get from the user? I get the weight in kilograms. This means I need one variable for storing the weight in kilograms. Then what's the process? The process is it's your logic. So this will be your logic here. So your logic is going to go here. Then we have the output. The output is what are you calculating? So in this case, we have to calculate whatever. It's either grams or kgs. So here at least they gave you a starting point, declare variables, then the constants that you need, then the output as a double. So what do we need to do? Then they already got the input from the form and stored that input inside our variable. So let me see, why is it doing like this now? Okay, then they showed you the output already. This means you have to determine the process. So in this case, we have to, like, since we can calculate two things, so we have a radio button. So for radio buttons, you have to use if statements. So if this radio button is checked, we have to calculate the weight in what? In pounds. Then otherwise, if this other radio button is checked, we have to calculate the weight using what? Using grams. Then that's it, nothing fancy. So I'm just going to go directly to the process since they gave you that. Since they gave you everything, so here you are supposed to fill in the process. So let me do this and let me just do this. So this was supposed to be your process. So how do we check if a radio button was checked? So it's RAD. Then in this case, you just consider your label. According to your label, you put the name of that radio button. So it's RAD, then the name, in this case, let's say pounds. How do we check if that specific radio is checked? You can say dot checked. This will return true or false. It will return true if that radio button was checked. By checked, we mean this. It will be like this. When you check a radio button, you are going to get like something like this. Then if it's checked, what are you going to do? Your output is going to be what? Output is equals to, how do we get from kilograms to pounds? Then we are going to check what? The conversion rate. So the conversion rate says here they were not specific. So pound conversion rate is 2.2. Then from these grams we can tell that we know that naturally 1 kg is 200 grams. So this means 1 kg is to 2.205 pounds. So to move from pounds to grams, what are we supposed to do? This is your basic maths. So we have to divide. We have to divide, actually. We have to take the input. So in this case, they gave us the name of that variable, which is input kg. So input kg divided by what? By pounds what? So it's pounds conversion rate. That's it. That's how you are supposed to calculate it. That's basic maths. You can figure that out. Then else, if we can't use else, because what if the radio button is not checked? Like what if not all the radio buttons are not checked? So that's why I say else if. So RAD grams. Then again we just calculate output. So output is equals to input kg divided by what? By grams, I guess. Grams conversion rate. then you are done. That's it. That's how you were supposed to answer this. Then you are done. Nothing, or you can provide an else. If these two condition fails, it means they didn't check anything. So you have to say maybe message box telling the user, but here they didn't specify, so this is not necessary. Dot show, please select an option, then that's all. That's how you are supposed to solve that. Then yeah, I guess that's it for this session.